Welcome to Chaos Divided, your weekly dose of wholesome hammer. If you're a fan of what we're doing, we hope you'll subscribe and follow us along. And if you'd like to support us directly, you can check us out at patreon.com/Chaos Divided 40K. This week, I'm joined by the ever amazing Tanya Gates, the War Mistress.
Hey everybody, how's it going?
And we're chatting about 10.5 or the balanced Dataslate, talking about narrative, tournaments, ways to make 40k fun again. I don't know where this is gonna go. I feel like there's no plan, and that's cool.
There's a little plan.
There's a hint of a plan.
There is, yeah.
There's like a corn berserkers amount of a plan here. It's like, we're just gonna do the thing.
That's right. I feel like what we need is a quote about change, and I even thought about it at like 3 o'clock in the morning last night, and then I completely forgot about it until now.
See, the quote I came up with was based on the Pariah Nexus, and it was no quote, only silence, because Necrons don't talk.
They have like their own sort of like Wi-Fi, I'm sure that they talk.
Yeah, but you never hear them. You don't, like, they don't say anything. There are no Necron quotes, because Necrons don't talk.
It's not for human ears, that's for sure.
Right? So, yeah. I felt like that was kind of a fun twist. The change thing, yeah, I guess I gotta go on Zinch. I never think to go Zinchy, because Zinch sucks.
Oh,
to be honest.
I don't know. Like I read. I'm in the process of reading the Yarick trilogy right now, and that first book, Zinch seems horrifying. Just absolutely. Actually, you know what? In all of the books that I have read, Zinch to me is like the most body horror, like the most like heebie-jeebies out of all of them.
Oh, that's fair. Yeah, as far as like body horror stuff. But yeah, as far as like a villain or a threat, Zinch is just like kind of flaily.
Well, is that what he wants you to think?
He literally, like, there's this whole thing where like Zinch actually can win the great game, but in order to maintain the great game, Zinch has to keep like foiling himself. So it's this weird thing where like Zinch messes up his own plans. So there's like multiple personalities of Zinch, and it just makes Zinch kind of lame. Because he can never win. Because if he wins, he like wins for good.
Sure.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not about the destination, it's about the journey, right?
Exactly. Because it's all about change. Because if it's over, then there's no more change. There's no more fate. There's no more anything.
That's right. Whereas, I actually kind of like that about people who get kind of messed with by Zinch, because they think that they know Zinch's grand plans, but then it turns out that they really don't, because like the grand plan is that there is no grand plan. That's my opinion.
Hashtag Magnus, is that what we're going for here? Like,
Magnus did everything wrong.
Magnus did do everything wrong, and anyone who tells you otherwise doesn't get Magnus.
That's right.
No, I feel like I could crap on Magnus all the time. Just like, you know what? Like, I don't know. Like, Fulgrim is like an arrogant bastard.
Yeah.
But so is Magnus. But like, Fulgrim kind of like knows he is, whereas Magnus is like, no, I am righteous, and that's what like ruins it for me.
I feel like poor Ahriman is like the guy, you know, like the dog that's sitting in the burning house going like, this is fine. This is what I feel like Ahriman is. He's just always just sitting in a burning house that Magnus created.
I mean, Ahriman also creates burning houses within the burning house, though. So
but who created the first burning house?
Yeah, no, it was 100% Magnus. Probably the first 10 burning houses were Magnus, and then after that, Ahriman's like, in order to put out the fires, I started more fires, guys.
That's right.
Everyone hated him for it.
Yeah.
That has nothing to do with anything. See, this is what I mean. I don't know where this episode's going. This is going to be a weird one, I think.
You know what? I think that we should just start with the big changes that affect everybody, which is the balanced data slate.
I like a lot of it. I'm not gonna lie.
I have mixed feelings, as I do with almost everything with Warhammer, but in general, I feel like it's really well thought out. And I can't say that I've felt that way about a lot of GW products for a very long time. And maybe ever, actually.
I very much like that this is actually a recognition that, like, 10th was not great.
Hmm.
Like, there's a lot of sweeping changes, and, like, I feel like they're actually trying to drill down to, like, what 10th could be, because, like, I have said it before that, like, there is a good rule set inside of 10th. We just haven't found it yet. And I do appreciate that they're experimenting and trying to get there, because, like, there is a lot of cool things about 10th that, like, 9th didn't have. And there is stuff that reminds me of older editions. And I at least like the experimentation and, like, the, like, let's try new stuff. And I feel like this is such a major shakeup that, like, I feel like there's going to be just, like, I don't know what's the next, like, month of Warhammer is going to look like, which is cool.
Yeah, I just wish that they would have done this in playtesting.
Listen, we all know the Games Workshop should do playtesting, and they will. Yeah. No, we are the playtesters.
I know, and I don't like it because the product is so expensive that I shouldn't have to be a playtester.
I've said this before, but if you actually read, like, Games Workshop's, like, investor statements, they basically know we're all addicts and they treat us like that. They abuse us. Like, we are in an abusive relationship with a dealer. Only, like, when we say plastic crack, like, we're all there. We have a problem. And they exploit us for
some of us are worse than others, for sure. For sure. Some of us acknowledge our problem and really try really hard to not contribute to it. But yeah. In general, I feel like the changes are good. Like, if this is the path forward and we have to be the playtesters, then fine. Like, this is the way that it is. But I also like how the factions that had things that felt really bad, speaking of Tzeentch, Thousand Suns, I feel like they were handled in a very good way. I was worried that they wouldn't handle them, like, heavy-handed enough. And some of the things that I think just should not be in the game, they've addressed, right? I just don't think that you should be able to kill a Baneblade just with flamers. That's just feels weird. And so I'm glad that things like that have been addressed.
Yeah, the you don't get an armor save thing is such a, like, for some factions it matters so little.
Mm-hmm.
And then for some factions it's, like, absolutely destructive.
Yeah.
Yeah, losing a tank to flamers feels really bad. But then, yeah, if you're, like, Necrons and everything you have has a 4-up invuln or Custodians or something, and you're just like, I don't care.
Yeah.
Like, oh no, your AP2 flamers got rid of my armor save. I guess I'll just keep rolling 4-ups anyways. Like, it was kind of like a messed up, and what they got still, like, they have AP2 flamers. AP4 flamers is still stupid.
It's still so good. Yeah.
Like here's my melt a flamer with, like, what's the Infernal Master's 2d6 attacks? Like, just, like, okay, so even if you have cover, you're on a 5-up on a Lehman Russ, like,
yeah,
you're gonna chip some wounds off. Like, it's still effective. I feel like I've seen a few people be like, oh, time to put Thousand Suns on the shelf, and I'm like, really?
You still have so many interesting mechanics and things. Like, I will say, like, I have somebody in my local game group who is, like, a regular sparring partner for me, and, like, he is kind of bummed, right? He does feel like now he doesn't have any anti-vehicle, like, anti-armor kind of tools. But at the same time, like, AP4 is not something that is very common in this game. So, and you've got a bazillion shots, so let's go.
I mean, other than Obliterators, they have almost every other tool in the CSM toolkit.
Mm-hmm.
They have access to las cannons. They have access to, like, tanks and, like, Mauler Fiends and Forge Fiends. Like, they have access to the same anti-tank 4 other factions have. They just, like, it's just not as, like, convenient for them.
That's right. That's right. Anyway, so in general, those kind of changes, they feel pretty good. And I do like that in some cases, like with the reinforcements strat, in a lot of cases, the factions that it really hurt those changes to, they sort of gave them like a horizontal shift, right? Maybe not better, maybe not worse, but like it's a horizontal shift into a different mechanic to play the game. So, yeah. So, like for guard, for instance, it doesn't feel as bad losing the reinforcements, basically core mechanic of your army, because you've been given new rules that allow you to actually play the primary mission, right? The primary mission is to move out onto objectives, right? And in order to get your detachment abilities bonuses, you had to stay still. Like, okay, so I either, potentially do more damage and not score points, or I score points and I really don't have the same hit in my damage potential. So I think that feels pretty good. It's not good enough to make me return to guard personally, but I do feel like that's what makes me think it's well thought through.
I do think like adding lethal hits and being able to move does make it so that, the rate of fire that guard can put out means they actually will be a little more effective overall while actually still getting to play with objectives. Because like when you
Yeah.
do the few games I've played with guard, like when you have a Rogel Dorn just sit there and shoot, like those few lethal hits just like do pump up the efficacy. Because, even if you're wounding on threes against something,
Yeah.
your limited hits you get from your hitting on fours or threes, being able to not have to roll them again does make a
Mhm.
bit of a difference. And being able to just sort of like actually move up and like, yes, you might not be able to endlessly bring back your squad of guardsmen, but if they can actually get a few lethal hits against like some space marines and, run is super powerful as an order.
Mhm.
And being able to actually then, have your las guns maybe chip a few wounds off of something can actually make a big difference.
Yeah. Yeah, so I'm excited to see what the guard players come up with that. I do think lists are going to change entirely, and it'll be really interesting to see how people use Lord Solar, because like there's no point in keeping him back with your artillery pieces anymore. So, but he's still too good to like not bring, in my opinion. So I'm really excited to see what the good guard players are going to come up with next.
I mean, if you run Lord Solar hidden behind a Baneblade and two Rogel Dorns, it's just like all hitting on threes with
Yeah.
mass lethal hits. That's going to be kind of bananas, actually. Like, that's a
Yeah.
pretty unstoppable spearhead, and then a bunch of
Yeah.
like guardsmen fanning out to the sides for objective play. Like,
Yeah.
that could actually be a lot of fun.
It could be fun. It could very well be fun. I'm too invested in orcs right now in the new orc codex that I won't be playing around with guard too much, but I'm always got my ear to the meta, so I'm always kind of interested to see what happens.
I mean, orcs have such a like fun codex to work with right now. I feel like
Yeah.
that it's like, yeah, you could try and figure out the minutia of the slight changes to guard, or you could be like ham, like, or feet first in going ham into like the orc codex and just like figuring out what fun there is there.
Yeah, and like I had been so like all last year basically I was playing Dread Mob without rules. So now I have rules, so I feel like I need to play Dread Mob, right? I just have to do it because one, it makes everything that I love to take more effective, and it's just fun and it looks cool, It's just like my sweet orky heart is just so happy to see all these like weird models on the table that like people had never seen. Like I went to a tournament last August with a Morkonaut and a Gorkonaut, and there were people there who had never played against one before because they're just like not good. And yeah, so it's nice to be able to juice those guys up a little bit.
Listen, I killed Canis Rex with some Chaos Bikers with the Renegade Raiders because of the extra AP. Like, there is some like fun stuff out there that is like not even been remotely viable through like index CSM. And as some of the codex come out, like I know there's been some codexes like sorry AdMech, like it just like didn't work.
Yeah.
But they do at least seem to be willing to like figure it out.
Yeah.
And like give you, like AdMech have gotten a few reiterations now. to try and like make them function. Like they just like completely like screwed the pooch the first time. But like, I don't know. There's a lot of fun stuff in there for like most of the books, and I know like there's some people that maybe bellyache about like, oh, it's not as good as whatever, but like they're all generally fun. They give you fun things to do, and I think that matters a lot more than like sheer firepower.
I think so too, because I mean, the sheer firepower thing, it's only going to be sheer firepower for a little while, right? Because we know codex creep is a thing. We know edition creep is a thing. So, like, I guess what happens when it's no longer a super powerful thing, right? Well, now you have to kind of go back to your book and find other ways to play the game. And so I would rather have lots of tools than just have one thing that's super powerful and destroys all, and like a dog with thumbs could pilot that list, right? Because those are really easy to nerf. They're also really easy to just become obsolete when like 4 books later there's a new thing that just destroys that one unit.
I mean, as far as codex, like I would say the Sisters Codex was a pretty big upgrade for them. But looking at the points changes, like they are already on the hit list for like Sisters armies are going to be smaller. There's going to be fewer tools in the toolbox, and like, yes, they are now better tools. The tools got an upgrade, but they do also seem to be like even the CSM Codex has already had quite a few like nerfs in it, and they seem to be getting quicker at that, because I feel like they left Necrons go like quite a while, and the newer codexes seem to be getting tackled a little faster. So your window of like the new hotness, I think, is like much smaller than it used to be.
And even as an orc player, like I chose the detachment that looked the most fun, and I did not take the detachment. Like I've played Bully Boys once, and once was enough for me to know that, like, yeah, Mega Knobs they needed to get hit a little bit, and I do feel like it's balanced. In general, I think a 4+ feel no pain is it's a little much. It's a little bit much.
Having faced Nosrog a few too many times, 4 up, 4 up, 4 up is just too much.
Yeah. It is. It's so, and yeah, so I feel fine about it. I was expecting it, and I feel like it's pretty even-handed as well.
Yeah, I mean, it only went up to a 5 up too. Like, it's like
so good.
Yeah.
I
wish Terminators had a 5 up feel no pain.
Yeah, it's good. It's great, actually. Yeah.
Like, I know they got the points hit as well, but yeah, I didn't actually play against it, but having heard some of, the stories, it was oppressive, so.
Yes. I don't know if we're ready to like segue into this, but I went to a narrative tournament. I was a tournament organizer. The tournament was put on by PlayOn Tabletop. And even at that super narrative level, it was real. Like, these are people who do not play in tournaments usually, right? The Mega Knobs and Bully Boys is oppressive, right? It's not that difficult to play. It's really hard for people to deal with. It's in your face right away. And yeah, so even at that level, if it's oppressive, then at competitive tables, it's beyond oppressive. Yeah, so I'm glad it was dealt with.
Yeah, I think there's a special skill set that you almost need to practice to be able to deal with that level of aggression.
Yeah.
My earliest years of Warhammer were fighting against Dark Angels with teleport homers. So they would basically have turn 1 deep strikes of Terminators in my face, and I played Tau. So like you had to like very quickly learn to adapt to that reality. And it takes a lot of like different thinking than how you would normally play 40k to know that somebody's going to be in your face. Like there's usually a bit of an assumption of like, you can't get to me until turn 2. and when you change that dynamic, it's a whole different game. So yeah, that's I mean, it's interesting that somebody would go to a narrative tournament and then just like smash face with that, or I guess maybe that's what they love. But
I don't think they realized.
oh, okay, that's fair
Yeah.
then.
Yeah, there was a lot of people there that it was one of their first events, or maybe they just
Okay.
played with their friends and they just didn't realize. But we could talk about that later for sure. I mean, it sounds awful, but it wasn't awful.
I mean, no, okay. With that context, I thought you were like meant like somebody had shown up, being like, "I'm gonna win this."
No.
No, that's okay. No, that's completely different. That's a different
Yeah.
story.
Yeah, like some of these lists were like bully boys, but also had squigoths.
Okay.
So
Okay.
yeah.
I'm back on board. All right, that's
Yeah.
fun. No, honestly, some of the smaller changes, like the changes to tank shock, I actually kind of like, and it's
Yep.
also more reminiscent of like older editions where like I don't know, a land raider is now going to be better at tank shocking than like I don't know, some dreadnoughts are like, which is kind of fun.
Yeah. I mean, it's called tank shock, but tanks weren't the best at it, right? Tanks were
Yeah.
just kind of like if you needed to get a wound off something, you might tank shock it. But like the real problem came down with dreadnoughts. It came down with trucks with their stupid wrecking ball.
Yeah.
You know, like it was everything except tanks that was using that stratagem. So even just narratively, this feels a lot better, but also like it just feels better.
Well, and I think, you know, I've seen something talking about, because like the Lancer, for example, because I think it got tank shock for free. You know,
Nice.
and it had a strength 20 weapon on it, so like it was like I'm rolling 22 dice every turn because I'm tank shocking endlessly, and
Yeah.
I feel like the Lancer didn't need to be better. Like that's
No.
already just such a good knight.
Yeah.
That, like, I don't know, a guaranteed 6 mortal wounds basically, like every single charge phase is a little messed up.
Yeah. I mean, but Morkanauts and Gorkanauts are the same way, right? Like their strength 18, I think.
Yeah, but they're not as fast. I think the problem with the Lancer is it's also like 26 wounds with a 4-up invuln, and like
Sure.
it just crosses the field.
Sure, but what I'm saying is that there's no reason why that tank shock needs to be that good.
No, that's fair.
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah.
So no, I like that as a change, and I feel like it makes tank shock more like situational. Like you're gonna use it when you really need to use it.
Yeah.
Whereas for some models, it was just like, why wouldn't I?
Yeah. Yeah, it's just a free 6 mortal wounds. Wow.
Yeah.
For 1 command point.
Yeah, which is like pretty good.
That's good value. Yeah, it's good value for your money. Yeah.
It's mortal wounds are on sale every day. Like
That's right. Stonks. The stonks are increasing.
Yeah, and even like the change of the grenade stats, I kind of like that you can't fall back and I still feel like using the grenade strat should mean you don't get to shoot. I feel like it should be an either or. That still feels weird to me.
Yeah. Yeah, but the other change too, I don't know if this was on this one, but I just realized it, was that now visibility and range has to come from the same model.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I think that's a good change as well. It's like one dude throwing a grenade, you know.
Yeah.
He doesn't get to use somebody else's eyeballs to determine where he's throwing the grenade, you know what I mean?
Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah.
No, they actually pass it like a hot potato across the unit.
Yeah.
I mean, I can't. Yeah, I don't know how many. I guess like it must have been an issue for some factions. I just like units with grenades for me don't tend to have a lot of units like models attached to them that don't have the grenade strat. So I was like, it felt niche, but I guess the niche is where a lot of the meta nonsense comes in. So
that's right. Yeah, and like a lot of the changes that came down, like all the little minute ones, I was like, well, that's how we were doing it anyway. Or like it mostly came down when I was reading the FAQ. I was like, doesn't everybody do it that way? doesn't everybody do it that way? like and then I just don't play in that way to know how you could read it in such a way to play it differently.
There was a couple of the FAQs, I can't remember which ones they were now, where I felt vindicated in that, like, I hadn't been, like, I'd been playing it the way the FAQ was written, but had
Yeah.
played against people that fought against the other way. And
Yeah.
I'm like, that's definitely not, like, the spirit of the rules. That's not the spirit of the
Yeah.
game. But, like, yeah, there was an ambiguity in, like, whatever you do you.
Yeah.
But I definitely felt a little vindicated reading through that, just being like, haha, I do, like, have a good, like, Warhammer soul inside me that, like,
Yeah.
actually, like, gives a shit.
Yeah. Yeah. I never really thought about it that way when I was reading through it. I just like sort of thought, wow, there are people who think about this game way differently than I do.
You
But
literally, they're right. Yeah.
yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
It doesn't even take a very big tournament before you get somebody being like, actually, I can do this because. Did you see the like modeling for advantage thing about like somebody's Sky Raven? What is it, Sky Raven?
Oh yeah.
Because he like
Yeah.
tilted it. So I was like that's enough to like there are people that play this game with just like the worst intentions.
Yeah.
Because like
Yeah.
I wouldn't even like think to check if the thing was 5 inches tall. I'd just be like, of course I can charge it. It's a model on the board. Like, why would the base be too tall to charge it? That would be really stupid. But
Mm.
no, he's gonna be there and be like, oh, actually the wing is too high. I'd be like, no, man, I'm done. Like, you win.
Yeah.
Like, goodbye.
Yeah. Yep. As somebody who plays an army that is 3D printed and nothing is a GW model, I always just give my opponent the benefit of the doubt, right? Like my Morkanaut variants are on a base to represent the stupid dress that the Morkanaut has, so that I allow people to measure. You can measure from the base, which would be the dress, or you can measure from any part of the hull. Like to me, I want everybody to have a good game. I want everybody to be able to interact in a way that is in the spirit of the game. And to me, it's just absolutely baffling that other people don't think the same way. But I mean, these are probably people who are playing like blue decks in Magic and just don't want you to have your game to play at all, you know?
I used to have a banner on one of my Demon Princes. I bought it from somebody. He put it on there, and I was like, "That looks cool. I'll keep it." And I was in a tournament once, and somebody was like, "Well, actually, I can see the top corner of the banner," and I was like, "That's like an aesthetic thing, man." And he was just like, "It's on the model." And I was like, "Okay, like,
I just let him have it.
just like what? All right, you kill," and then he killed him, and I was like,
Yep.
"Great, awesome, this is fun. I'm having a good time."
Yeah.
Which, you know what, that particular guy, he is a good guy to play against, but it was just one of those, just like, all right, I guess I want to have fun with the modeling side of this. Like, you almost have to like your tournament models and your like, for fun models if people are going to be like that.
Or you can just be me and not care. Yeah, shoot it. Okay, cool. Go ahead, shoot it. Whatever.
Also fair.
Yeah.
Yeah. I actually, you know what's another? I do like the clarification on the CP reroll that you can fast roll.
Yeah.
I feel like that just cleans up a lot, and it gets rid of that, like, oh, actually, technically, you should have been slow rolling it. Like, I like that just cleans up that whole, like, process.
Yes, I also like that GW is acknowledging that we do all fast roll, and we don't just roll them all one at a time, even though that's how we're supposed to do it in order to interpret the rules. Just acknowledging the way that players actually play the game is kind of nice.
Right?
Yeah.
I feel like that's actually been happening over like more and more. Like, I feel like older rule books were very much like slow rolling is the default. Like, if it perfectly makes sense, you can fast roll. And I feel like over time, the guidelines on fast rolling have definitely gotten more ingrained in like the rules.
Yeah.
And like even like when you're fighting, like you have precision, like you just do all those attacks, and if they spill back into the unit, like, you weren't supposed to have slow rolled that. Whereas like in previous editions, that would have been like you would have had to do them one at a time until you killed them. And I kind of like that, we're moving more towards how the game actually functions and is played.
Yeah, I mean, if everybody is going to continue to insist on playing 2,000 points, in 3 hours or less. Like, you need to get the fast dice rolling under control, right? And you need to sort of expect your opponent to do it. So yeah, I mean, yes, I like the change, but then this is another instance of, well, that's always how I played it anyway. That's always
Yeah.
how we play it in my super competitive local area. I do know a lot of people who play on Tabletop Simulator who said that there's certain, I'm not going to name anybody, but there's a certain country in Europe where everybody will get on your case if you try to CP reroll something that you fast rolled. So they all feel like super vindicated. They're like, ha, it's in the rules now.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not awesome somebody was doing that, but it's awesome that they're. I guess they lost.
Yeah, because now they can, well, actually back.
Amazing. But yeah, I wanted to give a shout out to Heroic Intervention. I feel like Heroic Intervention is back on the table. I feel like Pariah Nexus is like melee vindication right now. I feel like I played Leviathan and beat my face against every shooting army that blew me off the table, and now I'm sitting there being like, hey, I think I have a chance again. I feel like I can run like a melee centric army and actually like play the game and not just like die instantly.
Yep.
And that makes me very happy. And I feel like that will also be much healthier for the game overall.
I think so too. I think that in editions where one particular phase is more deadly than another, that the game overall suffers.
Yeah.
So yeah, I agree with you.
I think that will be. I think that's honestly going to bring out new and interesting things and make more of a range viable. Like, I think I was saying in the Discord earlier, like, I haven't seen a Space Marine player bring a melee unit. Like, other than maybe a small squad of, like, Blade Guard, I have not... Like, if you have the option between shooting and fighting, it's always shooting.
Yeah.
Like, almost exclusively.
I agree. In general, I find Space Marine shooting to be very, very strong. And it's really unfortunate because there's so many amazing, like, melee-centered units that I would love to see on. I'm a Dreadnought person. Like, I love a punchy Dreadnought. It's why I play Dreadmob. But but I would love to see some more variety on the table. You know?
I mean, I would love to have some punchy Dreadnoughts other than, like, Hellbrutes, which just... They're so slow. They're so slow and they're so bad.
Can we get some drop pods for Chaos Space Marines? Like
right?
Yeah.
That'd be fun.
It would be fun to give you guys some more options.
Just like some way, or just like give me a way to make it go faster. Can we just like put rockets on the back of like the big Dreadnought body and then it just like turbo jumps?
You know what would be really fun though? Is if you could sacrifice a model to the Demon Engine to allow it to go faster.
That's so cool.
That would be so awesome. Fluffy and narrative.
Right?
Yeah. Like maybe you like feed it a Chaos Cultist and then you get to go, like you get to add D6 to the move characteristic for that turn or something.
That'd be really fun.
That would be hilarious.
On top of an advance too, so you just be like, oh, I move 6 inches and then I advance 4 and then I also sacrificed a cultist, so I move another like 5, and then it's just like, it can't charge. Make it so you can't charge after that, because that would be too much. And then just like some like Hellbird just like across the table, just like hammer, just like that would be so fun. Like chomping on a cultist like a chicken wing. It's like,
yeah, I love it. Because like when you read the lore, right, they are constantly sacrificing humans into these demon engines to make them super angry and super ready to just like demolish whatever is in their path. Like that would be cool to have a mechanic like that.
Right? I feel, you know what? I feel like the Vashtor detachment they made where like the demon engine takes the wounds. You're right. There should be an option where like a nearby like damned model can take them instead, and just like, you know, some Malarfiend just like scoops up some cultists and eats them.
Yeah.
That is fluffy.
It's fluffy.
Why don't you work for Games Workshop Studios?
Why don't I work in the design studio?
Because that is so much better than what they came up with. Like, legitimately. Because, like, actually, the cultist one does work that way. You could, like, do another thing to go faster. Why can't you do that with demon engines?
Right?
That is fluffy.
Yeah. You could also, like, if you're like, oh, that's too good. Okay, well, the unit that you took a bite out of is now OC0 or something. You know?
Yeah.
You know, they're terrified. They might get scooped up next. They're not able to hold objectives or do actions.
I would
you
still
know?
do it. I would still be
Right.
like, here you
It
go.
smells so good. I mean, you basically got like a fast food buffet in front of you for all your demon engines. They don't need. They're just there. You know.
I mean, I'd feed a noise marine to a Hellbrood if it made it go even faster. Like let's have a higher like oh, you start at like, you know, like Whopper Wednesday and move your way up to like, you know, the full course meal of like a Terminator.
That's right. Oh, a Terminator. What would you even get?
I feel like you get like
2d6.
2d6 and you can still charge.
Or
You
1d6
just,
and a
fly
charge.
across. Yeah.
A Noise Marine might be 2d3.
There we go.
Yeah, a little bit more reliable.
Yeah. You know, I mean, the Noise Marine's kind of into it, so it's like, you know, they're like,
I
they're
feel
happy
like
to
I
get
should.
eaten.
I feel like I should just be writing this down for like narrative rules.
That's true. You should.
I should.
For a narrative tournament, be like, hey,
Yeah.
by the way, here's a bunch of CSM specific or chaos specific rules.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, I feel like that could work for like Chaos Knights too. They go faster if they like sacrifice something.
Do they need to go faster though?
No.
No, they get
don't.
something. They get something else.
They,
They don't get that.
they don't get. That's fair.
Yeah.
I mean, now they get a 2-inch penalty on the big knights if they like pivot in any way, shape, or form. So.
Good.
I know. I was very happy to see that.
Yeah.
I feel like the rules as they existed gave knights. It was like my Land Raider was like nerfed to hell if it had to move through any type of obstacle, and then somehow knights were just like, oh, actually, I go wherever I want. And I was like, this doesn't seem like the same thing.
Yeah. I will say that the pivot rules in particular really sort of solidified in my head the difference between people who play competitively and people who play casually, because there's a lot of casual players who are really upset at the pivot rules because they weren't playing movement correctly anyway.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so
But you think that would make it easier because then they'd like, or they don't want to lose the 2 inches. Is that what they're upset?
they never lost the 2 inches before because they were moving incorrectly.
Gotcha.
And why wouldn't, in my head, why would you, if you're a casual player, why would you deep read those rules to really understand them, right? The rules as they were written before were not exactly super clear. Why would you assume that you would have to pay for the pivot if it's not explicitly stated, right? So yeah. I don't blame anybody for not paying the pivot tax before, but you were supposed to, and I guarantee you that if you were, it would have been at least 3 inches in pivot for just a regular size tank. So this is much, much better.
I think like the repulsors are really long.
Yeah.
Like any type of a movement, or even the Custodes tanks are also the same thing. Like they're a very long model.
Yeah.
I ran into that with a game not too long ago where it was like, yeah, technically they were charging in to do a tank shock, and it was like, yeah, from the distance you're at, but you have to move, you have to pivot in order to get around the wall. So then by the time you actually like swing your back end out, you've moved 3 or 4 inches. So yeah, the 2 inches actually probably would have, well, no, it's pretty on the line. But yeah, it definitely makes it a lot cleaner, because then you can actually just be like, oh, I come forward and then I like go sideways.
Yeah. And if there's enough room, you can still do the stupid power slide shenanigans.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So no, I really like that as far as just like cleaning it up, and I think it makes it. Is the Stompa on a round base?
No, it's not on a base, I don't think. I don't have one, but I think it's just dress. It's just...
Oh, okay. I
Yeah.
know they're round. I wasn't sure if there was a... Because if they're on a round base, then they don't have to pay the pivot tax, and that would be hilarious.
I don't think that they have a base. They're huge. Like, they're gigantic.
There's some huge things that go on bases, though.
I know. Looking at you, Monolith.
Right?
Yeah. I feel like the Monolith doesn't need a base, but okay, it's got to hover an inch off the table. Okay, fine.
Yeah, I mean, Tau vehicles are going to be going everywhere again because they're on like a 60 mil flying base.
Yeah.
And now they can just go wherever they want, so good to look forward to that, everyone. Tau movement shenanigans are back.
Mm-hmm.
Nothing is safe from hammerheads.
Well, don't tell my Morkanaut or my Gorkanaut that. They'll be very sad.
Right? I'm like, they're... you know what, though? I do actually also like having played Demon Princes with Wings, for example, or even like, you know, any of the Demon Primarchs that have this, like, being able to just be like, hey, as long as I actually get to the other side of this, I can go through it.
Mm-hmm.
I think also makes things a lot better for a lot of models, because like, I feel like that was how people were playing anyways, because it was just like, if not, they couldn't move, because there are some terrain configurations that are just too tight.
Yeah, don't even get me started on those heavy WTC tables either. Oh my goodness, just so much terrain.
It's really good if you play melee. It's really bad if you don't.
Yes.
Like, it's like, no, but it's like, it's offensively good if you play melee.
Yeah, because you just bounce thing to thing to thing and get wherever you need to go safely.
Yeah, and you have those huge ruins to just like sit on the edge of and be indestructible.
Yeah.
But no, I want to know about the narrative tournament. I want to hear all the stories, because I am very quickly returning to my narrative roots, and though I still am playing some competitively, I thirst for narrative.
And this particular, I don't even want to call it a tournament, but this particular event, I didn't really know what to expect going into it. We didn't really sit down and have a meeting and be like, okay, if this, then this, right? So we were given like a page of suggestions of things to do, and then been like, go have fun. Okay. So I guess I'll start at the beginning. This particular tournament was 100 players, which is actually huge. We had an amazing crew of tournament organizers and helpers there. So it was Nick and JT from PlayOn. It was their baby. And for months before, we were in a Discord. It was me and another TO, Daniel, who he made some of the web comics for GW that they were doing for a while. But we were writing sort of like little narratives to sort of give some context for the war zone. And then the idea for it is that there's this system, the Hostia Prime system. There's 5 different war zones within the system, and all of the Imperial players are the defenders, and then literally everybody else is invaders. So the idea is that there's a Chaos warlord who has amassed a giant fleet that's coming into the system and just wants to take it over. It's full of resources, and also it's just a filthy Imperial system, so he wants to take it over for the glory of Chaos. And then, so we separated everybody into their sort of attacker-defender groups in the Discord, and they got to make friends in advance. They shared their narratives, they shared their hobby progress. They were really like the greatest bunch of people in the Discord. It was one of the healthiest Discords I've ever been in. And we also, a few weeks later, added a third sort of faction, but it was super secret. And it was a hive mind faction. So they were on the second day of the event, they made themselves known, essentially. And so that was like really fun. So how this worked out, is each round, the table would have a mission on it based off what war zone you were in, with special rules for the table. So, for instance, there's a moon that has like a promethium refinery on it. And so there was like gas bubble rules for like different points on the board, and you'd have to roll off. And if the gas bubble exploded, then, you know, you'd have to take wounds or whatever. And then each individual person would get like a secret mission, right? And if they completed their secret mission, they'd call a tournament organizer over. We would come over, read the stratagem, or sorry, the secret sort of condition that they did, and then we would look at the board state and see how it's going. If they were totally demoralizing their opponent, sometimes that condition would be bad for them. Whereas if they were getting totally demoralized, the condition might be very good for them. If it's pretty even, there's a chance that it could go really good or really bad for either one of them at the table. And we basically had a table full of models in a diorama. We could pull anything that we wanted from the table and create some sort of narrative event on the table that made sense with the basically their secret condition that they had satisfied. There was also 3 tables that represented orbital sort of bombardment stations. So if you were on that table and you had control over the main gun on it, at the beginning of your command phase, you could call down an orbital bombardment on any table that you wanted. So there's just
awesome.
there's like a whole bunch of stuff that was going on all at once. And then day 2, the Tyrannid invasion. So we had a whole bunch of Tyrannid terrain that we could put on tables. If you land on it, you got to take mortal wounds. We also had access to Forge World Titans. Sometimes we would just take the Titan, because it was 10 tables in a row. Each TO was responsible for 10 tables. So, like, every once in a while, to just make people sweat, we would just put a Titan at the front of their table, and then we could just take a tape measure and go, like, whichever direction we wanted, and either do mortal wounds. We could push people back a number of inches away from the line, just a whole bunch of different things that we could do. And there was no restrictions. We didn't have to wait until somebody achieved a secret mission to go over and mess with their table. We could look at the board state at any moment in time. So that we were talking about before, how bully boys were a little bit oppressive. Well, if you're playing bully boys, there's a good chance that a TO is going to come over and just mess with you. And yeah, you're playing.
I mean, I feel like the orcs would like that. I feel like that's like, you know, if you're an orc player, I feel like you're here for that.
They did, you know. So I had brought some of my models. So like maybe my war boss challenges your war boss. You know, maybe your war boss is gonna die. Maybe mine will. I don't know. We're gonna find out. You know. So there's just like a lot of stuff like that coming down. There was a Harridan that just like flew around, messing with like random tables, whatever it felt like doing. And yeah, and the really great thing about this event is that because the expectations were outlined in the Discord months before, people realized that the point of it was to make sure that the person across the table from you was having a great time. So at certain moments of time, if their opponent had gone to the washroom or walked away or whatever, sometimes players would call us over and ask us to mess with their models, essentially, to even out the board state for them. And that was really, really good to see. That happened a lot more than I thought it would, actually. And yeah, it just sort of restored my faith in gamers, and it showed me that there is a way to play outside of the competitive scene, outside of standard organized play, that does ensure that everybody has the chance to bring the models that they want, and everybody has the chance to just have a great time.
That's incredible.
Yeah,
I love that. That sounds amazing.
It was so fun. I've never had that much fun playing Warhammer, And at the beginning, I didn't know what to expect, right? So people were asking me like, "Oh, do you get to play this weekend?" And at the beginning, I said no. And then on day 2, I was like, "Yes, I get to play on any table I want."
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That sounds, yeah. I feel like that would be so refreshing too. Just
It was super refreshing.
Like, yeah, that is a palate cleanser of just like pure Warhammer joy.
And I feel like most people in my local area have never gotten to experience anything remotely like that. So I want to bring that to them. I want to run an event like this. There's a big Comic-Con in the town next door from where I am. And either tomorrow or the next day, I'm going to talk to the organizers and be like, "Hey, can I do this? I need a year. I need a year to prepare for it, but can I do it?" So cross your fingers that I'll be able to do it. Maybe not 100 people, but I might do like 20, 30, something like that.
I mean, 100 people requires a lot of people around you just making that happen. I think, you know, there are some tournaments, regular, tournaments, RTTs and GTs where like people have been doing it for a while and they can kind of get it off the ground with one. But to try and start something from scratch and organize terrain and make sure everything's set up and make sure the space is like taken care of, and even just having somebody who knows how to like just keep the flow of an event going, like it takes quite a few people. And especially like if the group that's going to the event isn't used to that type of event, like you're spending a lot of time just like, where's the bathroom, like where am I supposed to be, what time is it, when's round 2, like there's just a lot of those like little things that,
Yeah.
if you've never organized an event, like a lot goes into, even a 3-round tournament at your local game store. There's a lot that goes into making that happen that if you just show up, you don't know.
Yes. And being a tournament organizer is thankless work. So be nice to your local tournament organizers. Thank them for all the hard work that they're doing. And I don't know, like maybe bring them a treat. I don't really know any tournament organizer that's going to say no to having a treat.
Right?
Yes.
No, that's really cool. And I honestly like, I said this before, I am like thirsty for more narrative Warhammer, because I am like, there's a time and a place for competitive play and it's fun in the moment, but it doesn't like kindle your soul in the way that just like a really fun, silly game can like make you just like have a different appreciation for what's going on. Because like, I often say this to people that are new to the hobby, like the rules come and go, but if you can have fun, then like that's everlasting. And I feel like narrative is where you find the fun most consistently.
Yeah. I also feel like at least around where I live now, all we have is competitive play. That's it. I never even got to experience anything narrative until this past weekend, right? And I really feel like, it's league after league with no break in between. And then there's several competitive events in between. And I think people are getting tired, honestly. Like, burnout is real. You could love something, but if you do it all the time with no breaks, and it's something as time sink intensive as Warhammer, where you have to practice your games to make sure you can still play them in less than 2.5 hours. You have to be completely painted. You have to have a display board. Like there's all of this stuff that goes into it. Even if you love it with all of your heart, burnout is a thing. And I think that playing in this narrative way is a really great way to reset yourself, because now I do feel reset. Honestly, I had 2 events coming up at the end of the summer and I was like, oh my goodness, like I just don't know. I just don't know if I can do it. Like the balanced Dataslate and all this stuff coming in. Thank you GW for sending that to me in advance, but it was a lot. Like I saw all of this stuff come in and I was overwhelmed, right? Because like that core rule and balanced Dataslate, that is a big set of documents. You know what I mean? So I was feeling super overwhelmed by the sheer number of things coming in and thinking like, how am I going to learn all this? How am I going to paint my models? And then going to this event last weekend, I was like, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. There is a format where you don't have to chase the meta.
Mm-hmm.
There's a format where you can play whatever you have painted already. So I think that I'm just super stoked for it.
I did want to. I think I mentioned this to you in Discord at one point, but I did want to kind of give a shout out to. I started playing in an old world league here over the summer, and one of the ideas that I've really appreciated is the idea of challenges. So each person for their faction like declares a challenge, and it's actually part of like the prizing is like how well you uphold your challenge. And like, you know, people are doing it in a very narrative way and like actually giving themselves restrictions and like actually like putting kind of like, you know, I'm not going to do this, you know, even though that might be better, like, and actually like living that spirit and being able to then like, but beyond that, it also like tells a story. So like telling the story of why that challenge applies to your faction. Like, you know, my challenge is I'm playing Warriors of Chaos. Everything is Marcus Slanesh because they are I call them Sigvald's fastest. They're not Sigvald's best. They're Sigvald's fastest. Their whole goal is to get the battle done with as soon as possible. So in Old World, there's a rule where it's called impetuous. So if on a roll of 1 to a 3, if you're able to charge, you just charge. So they're just like, so even if it makes no sense, if it's like a long bomb impossible charge, if on a 1 to a 3, they're just doing it. And I've applied that to my entire army. So my entire army is a bunch of like Slaneshi hordes that are always willing and always are planning to charge at all times, even if it makes absolutely no sense. And that's fun. It like changes the like, so even when you're building a list, you're like, well, I need to build something that can charge and like is like that's what it wants to do. So like it changes the way you even like play the game.
Yeah.
You know, there's been other challenge like one guy played he made it so similar to older editions of like 40k, you can use like your general's leadership. He made it so that like his challenge is that every unit in his army is like headstrong. They're a bunch of dark elves, so he was like, you know, on a 1 or a 2, I can't use that rule. So they're like literally stuck with their own leadership, and leadership is huge in Old World. So it's like it's up to the dice. It's like maybe and like on a 5 to 6, everything works normally. So when we played, he rolled a 2, so he was just like, well, everything is stuck with the leadership he has, and he had this giant monster that I killed the handlers off of, and then it ran, and like even though the general was 4 inches away, he had a leadership 5 that he could not roll. So he just like kept running forever and right off the board. So like that's how I got rid of that giant monster, because I just killed the handlers out.
That's amazing.
Like, it's a way to add like a really easy level, and like especially in a league where it's like you're getting to know new people, like you don't want to go in and like be like if you're a super narrative player and then you go against somebody who isn't, it can sometimes feel a little weird. So this way, like everyone, it's out in the open, everyone knows about it, and everyone's kind of on board, and then it's actually like, you know, people are tracking it. People want to know, like, you know, after a game, people will like, did both of you do your challenges? And we're like, yeah, we did. And everyone's like, that's sick, like awesome, you know what I mean? So it just like brings in that like, it's just a little bit of narrative that then like kind of permeates out. And I feel like you could super easily do that with 40k. Like just find like what's the thematic, like, you know, thing that you're gonna do that maybe like makes like, you know, doesn't completely hamper you so you can't play the game, but just like maybe puts the, you know, one arm behind your back and you've got to like try a little bit harder. And you're gonna maybe put yourself into a bad situation. But honestly, bad situations are more fun to play from. So
yeah, and I think that's a little bit how the secret objectives thing worked. Is like it was random. So sometimes you would get something that, you know, really goes against what your army wants to do, but if you achieved it, you get like a bunch of points. So I don't know, I really liked how they did it. You know, I have some ideas on how I would make it run a little bit smoother, but in general, I'm super excited for this format, and also it's just really fun. If you're somebody who likes lore, it is super fun to just be able to roleplay like a variety of different things in an hour, right? So like I was the commander of a Hellhound tank. I was a Lord Invocatus. I was a Keller morph. You know, like just like all of these different things that you can be. And yeah, if you love roleplay and you're a fair-minded person, it's just so fun to be able to engage with everybody. So yeah, and for me, I have social anxiety, so sometimes it's hard for me to like go out and actually make friends. But in this format, I have to make friends. I have to make friends at the table. I have to ask you a bunch of questions. I have to determine your board state. I have to determine the board state from people who haven't played a lot, who may not know the board state also, which is actually a kind of fun challenge. And yeah, I don't know. It was great. I highly recommend it. I'm going to be taking applications for people to be roleplay tournament organizers with me.
That would be awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I've often seen Warhammer described as kind of the end boss of nerd culture. So like, I feel like, you know, even your like staunchest, you know, meta competitive player, they're into other nerdy stuff, like, you know.
Oh, absolutely. I can tell you. Okay, so we have this idea of the top competitive players not caring about the hobby, not caring about the lore, only caring about smashing faces. And from my experience, that is not true. The top competitive players, yes, Art of War coaches, you know, like Team USA captains, all of them love the lore. All of them. I don't know anybody who isn't fully engulfed in Warhammer that plays at that level. And I think you have to in order to avoid the burnout. If you were just, I need to know the rules all the time. If that was it, like there'd be like you would get burnt out. There'd be no way that you could continue to reach that level, you know?
That was partly why I stopped playing Tau, is because I didn't care about the story anymore.
Yeah.
Like Tau just like wasn't in my heart anymore.
Yeah.
And I feel like Emperor's Children is like an endless source of just like no matter how bad a game I'm having, if I am just running around like an idiot and like pew-pewing people with blastmasters, like I'm still having some fun.
Yeah.
Or, you know, one of my favorite is like, you know, somebody like shoots everything into one of my units and they don't die, and then you just get to be like, like,
yeah,
like I love it. You can't kill me. Like,
yeah,
delightful agonies. Like, you know what I mean? And then they're just like,
okay. Yeah. I love to make it weird. Also,
yeah.
Like
Warhammer is weird.
It's weird. It's weird. Think about what we're doing. This is so strange, right? Like, we've got an entire universe of books. Like, you could find a story about any unit in Warhammer, you know? And everything has a personality. Every unit has a personality in that lore, you know? And like, it's dolls. You're playing with dolls, but it's like dark and edgy and, you know, like, have fun with it. Be weird.
Like, wargaming comes out of like 19th century like British aristocracy like hobbies. So like it's even weirder than that. Like we're all just kind of like role playing as like future aristocrats, like moving figures on a board as well. Like there's all kinds of meta parts of this that just like are super strange.
Yeah.
And if you take this as like straight-faced, super serious business, you have like missed all of the points.
Yes. And I mean, Warhammer itself, Rogue Trader had a game master. Like, let's bring that back, because let me tell you, I don't think you will have any more fun playing Warhammer than when there is a game master, right? Somebody who just comes in and just tinkers with stuff. You know, like if you can get into the right headspace to be like, yeah, this is a story. Like let's do it, you will not have more fun playing Warhammer.
If you come out of your games with a story to tell, you've done something right. And I feel like if you have to kind of approach the game differently in order for that to happen. Because like the story of the overwhelming like slaughter of your enemies is not actually super exciting. But like, you know, a story of like back and forth and like twists and turns. Like if you go at it with the, you know, desire to tell that story, and then like you and your opponent just have like a great time watching that story unfold between you two, like that's the basis of narrative. Like, you know, adding on all the other stuff can make it more fun, but I feel like it's an attitude. Like narrative play is an attitude you have to choose to bring to the table.
Yes. I will admit, I have struggled in the past to understand what narrative gaming was, right? Because I learned from like the first community that embraced me in this hobby was the competitive players, right? So I don't know, narrative players maybe do better. I don't know, and so I didn't know what narrative means. Like, does narrative mean that I like understand how orcs are supposed to play and then I make my decisions off that? Am I creating my own narrative and making decisions off that? And I think like the disconnect for me was the decision making process, because the decision making process playing competitive is it's the only thing that matters. Right? Like you are trying to make the best decisions and you're trying to make better decisions than your opponent. It's very clear cut. This is what both parties expect, right? Whereas in narrative gaming, I didn't know what the decision-making process was, and I just didn't really know what the expectations were. Now that I have played as a tournament organizer, as a game master, I think I get it now, right? Like the decision-making process can be influenced by many different things when you get to the table, but the underlying principle is that it is collaborative the entire way that you go, right? Competitive wargaming is collaborative in that you are helping each other get through all of the rules and all of the phases and everything that you need to do to play a game in 2.5 hours. That's the collaborative part of wargaming competitively. And you still have to do that when playing narratively, but you also have to collaborate in the decision-making process. If I do this, then you can do this. Right? Or, oh, you told me that your war boss only wants to... Yeah, this was a great narrative. Your war boss only wants to get into melee with Helbrecht. That's all that he wants to do. I, as Helbrecht's commanding player, am going to make decisions that make sense with that narrative and maybe facilitate that for you.
Yeah, I've often thought of it as playing, you know, the decisions you make in a more narrative setting are more of what you want to do, not what you should do.
Yeah.
Like it's not necessarily about making the optimal choice, it's about doing the thing that you want to see happen. You know, when you're sitting there and you're like, you know what, I don't know if this is a good idea, but I want to see how it turns out. Like I feel like that's kind of the switch between like, that's how that, you know, you're getting closer when you can play like that. When you're just like, let's see what happens. And like, you know, you're pushing yourself to maybe not play, you know, especially if you are coming at it from more of a competitive side. It's the willingness to play poorly in the name of a better game.
It's like I don't know if you've seen it. There's a clip of Willem Dafoe talking, I think it might be inside the actor's studio or something like that, and they're talking about how to become a better actor, and he's like, try to act poorly, try to mess it up, just try your best to do a bad job and just see what happens, see what you can learn from that. And maybe that's the key to really getting narrative. Try to mess it up. Try to play war games badly. and
Yeah.
see what you learn from that.
Like, we've often talked about like risk and reward in a war game, and Warhammer specifically. And another way, to kind of think of that is like pushing out the envelope of like acceptable risk and acceptable reward.
Mhm.
Like, do the high risk, low reward thing that maybe doesn't make a ton of sense, but is gonna feel really cool if you pull it off.
Mhm.
Or, the high reward thing that is also like ridiculously high risk, that is like, you're like, wow, there's like a 15, like, if you're somebody who's like can run the probabilities of things, you're like, wow, there's like a very small chance of this actually working out the way I want it to, but if it does, it's going to be awesome.
Yeah.
Like, do the awesome thing, and just
Yeah.
like, if you're not playing for money, don't play like you're playing for money.
Yeah. The other thing too, which I think people were a little bit shocked about, is a lot of times people would call me over to make rules clarifications for them. And they'd be like, so this is what's going on the table. And we wanted to know if we could do this. And every single time I'd be like, is that what you want to do? Yes. Is that what you want to do? Yes. It's your game. You don't need me here to make that decision for you. If you both agree, that's now the rules.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that, I think, was like an eye-opening moment for a lot of people at the table, right? Like, you could just see the light bulbs going off round one, going, oh, okay, like, I get it. The rules are guidelines in this format. If we both agree, then, and that's going to be the most fun, then that is the right decision.
I have thought a lot about, last time we talked about the community having a responsibility for Warhammer, and not just relying on Games Workshop to tell you what Warhammer is, but to invite that in. And I've really, like, I've thought a lot about that and really tried to take that to heart, that, like, when you're in the middle of a game, it doesn't matter what's going on. What makes sense for both of you overrules some arbitrary like FAQ from something that like doesn't maybe fit perfectly. Like, rather than trying to find the perfect solution, come to an agreement that's better. And if you can do that, and if you can go in it with a spirit of collaboration, your games get better.
Yes.
And if you can then like build a community of collaboration, like, I don't know if I haven't gotten there yet, but I can't even imagine what that looks like. Like, if everyone comes at it with more of that collaborative, like, let's make something better than what the rules we've been given are. Like, that could be crazy. And it's like, this tournament actually sounds like a good step in that direction of like, what happens when like we as the players take a little bit of this back and say, you know what, this is our game. You've just designed it. But like, what happens when we take more of it back ourselves and just have fun with it? Like, that's really cool.
Yeah, it was really cool. I cannot tell you how inspired I am now to do this. It would be incredible to play in a game like this, obviously, because the feedback that we got from the players was overwhelmingly positive. I didn't personally hear one bad thing. I don't even like, I saw a few long faces of people getting sort of destroyed, but then as soon as you would come over to the table, the smiles would be back, right? Like, or if we missed it and somebody got destroyed early. Like, in one case, there was a Sisters player who just got destroyed early, but one of his I believe it was Grey Knights. It was another Imperium player needed help. I was like, okay, you need to go call a strafing fire run down for your friend, right? I bring him over to a different table, allow them to engage in the game, another chance, roll some more dice. Like, let's figure out a way to bring you back into the game when things didn't go your way, right? Because, like, really, the whole point of gaming is to make friends, roll dice, have fun. I'm just so inspired.
That's awesome. Having been the recipient of a 20-minute tabling in a round of a GT, the next 3 hours are real bitter. So being able to get somebody out of that is huge. That's awesome. And like, yeah, I would imagine everyone who participated in that is like hungry for more, which, you know.
We are going to do it again next year. However, people who went this year get first dibs on tickets. So it may end up being that half the tickets are already spoken for by the time they go up for sale. But, you know, it allows them to continue their narrative, right? And it allows them also, because we had a few people that went last year in Calgary. This year was in Edmonton. It allowed them to come back, and they really took a lot of new people under their wing in the Discord and really went out of their way to sort of show them the spirit of the game. And so I think it's a good choice based off the kind of community and the kind of event that PlayOn wants it to be. I think it's a really good way to engage those people, to like sort of show the new people coming in what it's all about.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I am somewhat conscious of time. Any last thoughts before we wrap up?
Just if you're not feeling, you know, the game at the moment, this event really did show me that, you know, you could just do whatever you want. You could do whatever you need to do in order to bring that passion back into your gaming space. And I mean, it also showed me that there's fun ways for you to run events that don't just feel like work, and that allow you to also have fun and engage with the game while you're running the event. So maybe that's something to consider.
I don't think I can add anything onto that is even remotely more insightful. So on that note, I want to thank you all for joining us. Don't forget to subscribe to Chaos Divided wherever you're listening from, and you can find us on Instagram and YouTube at Chaos Divided 40K. If you'd like to connect with us directly, we're at Tanya Gates on YouTube.
At Tanya Gates on YouTube, at the.warmistress on Instagram. It's basically the only places I hang out these days.
And I am at Blushing Noise Marine on Instagram and YouTube. And until next time, bye-bye.
Bye, everybody.